Telling this story is not easy for me. Years have passed, and I still sleep with the lights on at night. There are certain sounds that seep into you. Once they do, they never truly leave. The apartment building where everything began looked ordinary from the outside. It had 3 floors and a basement. It stood at the end of the street, old, yet well maintained. You know how some buildings give you an unsettling sense of silence the moment you step inside. This place was exactly like that. The owner of the building was Mr. Johnson, who lived in the basement apartment. He was a quiet, reserved man who kept to himself. Aside from rent and maintenance fees, he rarely interacted with us. The only thing we knew about him was that when he first moved in, there had been only the single apartment he lived in. Later, through years of work and savings, he had the 3 upper floors built. Mr. Johnson had lost his wife and children, but he never shared any details about it with us. Most of the time, whatever food we cooked at home, we would make extra and bring some down to him. He would always be genuinely happy, greeting us with a shy, almost embarrassed smile. On the floor above him, first floor 3 cousins were living together. They had come here for seasonal work, and once things started going well for them, they never returned to their hometown. Their names were Alex, Brian, and Michael. They were quiet, well-mannered boys who mostly kept to themselves. They were much younger than me. Whenever they saw my mother or me, they would try to carry our shopping bags, and on nights when I had to work late, they would knock on my mother's door to ask if she needed anything from the store. Directly below us lived Grace. She was older than me. She too was very quiet and withdrawn, with an expression that always looked as if she were afraid of something. Years earlier, she had fallen in love with a man. When her family refused to approve the relationship, she married him in secret. Her father disowned her, the man she married cheated on her, and in the end, she was left completely alone. I always felt deeply sorry for Grace. Her life was somewhat similar to my mother's, and perhaps that was why I felt such a connection to her. As for us, we lived at the very top, in the attic apartment. When we first moved in, I loved it. Maybe because of the darkness we were going through at the time. It felt like the beginning of a new life to me, a quiet and peaceful place. Everyone in the building seemed understanding, calm, and respectful. I lived there with my mother and my 4-year-old little brother. Our father had left us a long time ago. Over the years, the weight of the household had slowly, almost unnoticed, settled onto my shoulders. I worked, helped support the household, and tried to be both a sister and a father to my little brother. Everything began that night. It was close to midnight. I felt uneasy. Even though I had to go to work early the next morning, I couldn't fall asleep. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching outside. Suddenly, I saw a black shadow glide into the apartment building. I tried to suppress the fear rising inside me, telling myself it was probably just exhaustion playing tricks on my eyes. Just then, a violent jolt shook the building as if someone had grabbed it with both hands and rattled it. The walls trembled. A thin sound came from the chandelier. Earthquake. I shouted. I grabbed my mother and my brother by the arms and rushed outside. We waited in what we thought was a safe area for the shaking to stop. We didn't even pay attention to what we were wearing. I only noticed the keys at the last second and grabbed them as we ran out of the apartment. As we went downstairs, I saw the cousins standing at their door as well. At that moment, I noticed Mr. Johnson had also come outside. We quickly gathered in front of the building, but then we realized Grace was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, I shouted, "Where is Grace?" I asked Michael. The boys stared at me with frightened, empty expressions. Just then, another jolt hit. My mother and brother started crying. The strange part was that we seemed to be the only ones in the neighborhood who had come outside. In all the chaos, we didn't even have time to wonder whether everyone else had slept through it. Alex suddenly stepped forward. "I'll go wake Grace," he said. I moved closer, intending to go with him. Together, we carefully went back upstairs. After knocking on the door several times, Grace finally opened it. "Grace, didn't you feel the earthquake?" "We need to get out of the apartment," I said urgently. She looked at me with an emotionless stare. "No," she said. "Nothing happened." Her eyes weren't really looking at me. They were fixed on the empty space behind me. Something stirred inside me at that moment, but my logic took over. Not everyone feels an earthquake. I told myself, after standing outside for a while. Everyone eventually calmed down, and still frightened we returned to our apartments. Everyone planned to sleep in what they believed was the safest spot in their homes. As for us, my mother, my brother, and I decided to lie down near the apartment's entrance right, next to the wardrobe bolted to the wall so we could escape quickly if we had to. When morning came, everything seemed normal. When I went to work, no one had felt anything. It had not even been mentioned in the news. I remember thinking that even though we lived in a small town, we were not that insignificant. The whole situation was starting to feel deeply unsettling. Then Grace came to mind, along with that empty look in her eyes. On my way home, I decided to stop by her apartment. Maybe she was sick. After my shift ended, I headed home quickly. When I arrived at the building, Grace was standing at her door, taking out the trash. The moment I saw her face, a chill ran through me. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, and her face looked sunken, almost hollow. I wanted to ask if she needed anything. Instead, she invited me inside, saying she had just made fresh tea and that we could drink it together. I did not want to refuse. I thought she might really be unwell. She let me inside, but it felt as if she was no longer Grace. She paused while speaking. Her sentences remained unfinished. Her eyes were empty. It felt as though she was looking at me from somewhere far away, from inside something else. When the conversation faded and my tea was finished, I stood up. I made excuses. I said I needed to check on my mother, that we needed groceries, that I had to stop by the market. I asked if she needed anything. She thanked me and walked me to the door. I went upstairs. Until my brother came home, I helped my mother prepare the table. We ate together. As the evening went on, I must have fallen asleep while watching television on the couch. I woke up to a low roar, something between a rumble and shouting. When I opened my eyes, my mother was calling out to me in panic. There was a loud vibration inside the building, a shaking, a sense of chaos. I jolted awake and we ran outside immediately. This time, everyone else had heard it too and come out as well. Everyone except Grace. Alex and Michael rushed back into the building to wake her. Time passed, but they still did not return. Unable to fight my curiosity, I went inside as well. From the lower floor, I called out, "Alex, what is happening?" I shouted. Alex answered, saying she was not opening the door. My anxiety grew. I ran upstairs. We pounded on the door again and again, but there was not a single sound coming from inside. I said we should call the police immediately. While waiting, we continued shouting for her. When the police arrived, we explained that we had run out because of an earthquake, but Grace had not come outside and might have been hurt. The officer looked at us in a strange way and said that there had been no earthquake. They had not felt anything, and there were no reports. We stood there in shock, trying to explain, even though so many of us were saying the same thing. The police had already decided that there had been no earthquake. Then they called the locksmith to open the door. When the door was opened, we were met with a horrifying, blood-chilling scene. The moment we stepped inside the apartment, there was the stench of a corpse that seemed to have been rotting there for weeks, and the place was swarming with flies. As we approached Grace's body, we were confronted with something beyond description. Nothing I had ever seen in my life had prepared me for it. Her mouth was wide open. Her jaw looked as if it had been dislocated. Her teeth were gone. Her eyes had bulged out of their sockets. Her ribs had collapsed inward, and her body was twisted in an unnatural way. No human being could have died like that. And Grace had not died from anything resembling an earthquake. She had been killed in a completely different manner. As the police questioned us, they looked at all of us as if we had lost our minds. When I told them that I had spoken to Grace earlier that day, they began asking whether I was taking any medication. I reacted sharply and asked if everyone in the building was supposedly on medication as well. The officers said they would conduct a thorough investigation. Meanwhile, they placed Grace into a body bag and took her away. Even inside the bag, her body remained stiff and rigid. About a month passed after that incident. The apartment was sealed and cleaned. Life went on, at least on the surface, but none of us were able to leave that night behind. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I went to the window to draw the curtains and noticed the same black shadow standing below the building. As I watched it, it lifted its head toward me and our eyes met. Its face looked almost human, but it wavered and blurred, like a television screen filled with static. My skin crawled. I was terrified, and in that moment, I remembered seeing it during the night of the so-called earthquake as well. When I called out to my mother, it glided away and disappeared before she reached me. She looked at me with concern and said I seemed deeply shaken, but this was far beyond being shaken. Inside me was a constant sense of waiting. It felt as if something was going to happen, though I did not know what. The apartment where Grace had died was emptied. It had been cleaned, but cleaning did not remove the smell. Every time I passed that floor, A metallic taste filled my throat. Even with the cousins, we avoided making eye contact, because the moment we did, the same image returned to all of our minds. One night, around 3 in the morning, while I was inside the apartment, I heard strange noises coming from outside. It sounded as if someone was dragging something heavy along the ground. I parted the curtain. The area beneath the streetlight was empty. Just as I was about to close the curtain, the same silhouette emerged from the darkness. It was the same entity, tall, dressed in black, not quite walking, but moving as if it were being dragged across the ground. This time, it stopped without lifting its head. Then, slowly, it raised its face and we locked eyes. This time, I could not run. My feet were frozen in place. Its eyes were not human eyes. They were extremely dark, yet somehow full. It could see me. Not only did it see me, it recognized me. I closed the curtain. My hands were shaking. Then a loud crash echoed inside the building. I told my mother immediately, and she was terrified. When my brother saw us like that, he became even more frightened. I said we needed to grab a few clothes and leave right away. We were going to my uncle's place. We had no other choice. We packed our bags. As we were leaving, I heard a sharp scream. I leaned over the stairwell and looked down, but the floors were empty. Neither Mr. Johnson nor the cousins had come out. Once we were sure the stairs were safe, we started going down quickly. Still, I knocked on the doors to warn the others on the lower floors. My mother went down toward Mr. Johnson's apartment. Mr. Johnson opened his door, but the cousins did not. A deep darkness settled inside me. My fear grew even stronger. Instead of continuing to knock, I went straight downstairs. While my mother asked Mr. Johnson whether he had heard the noises, I called the police. The police arrived at the building very quickly. Because of the previous incidents, they already knew us. They now looked at us with suspicion, but they also knew that neither we nor any ordinary person could have done something like this. They simply could not explain it in any other way. They broke the door open. What we saw was horrifying. The cousins had died just like Grace. Their bones were bent as if they were soft. Their bodies were folded in half. Their eye sockets were empty. Their jaws were dislocated. Their mouths were still open, and they were standing arm in arm with one another. It looked as if they had clung to each other in terror. We told the police and Mr. Johnson that we could not stay there any longer. Mr. Johnson was deeply shaken by what had happened. People he knew and cared about were dead, and the apartment building had begun to be spoken of as cursed. It was clear he would never find tenants again. I thought to myself, poor man. What terrible misfortune. He had lost his wife and children, and now he was losing his only source of income, his home. He turned to me and said that he would try to sell the building and return to his village. We said our goodbyes and went to my uncle's house. When we told them everything that had happened, they were terrified as well. I could even feel them looking at us with suspicion, as if we were the ones who were cursed, because there was no other way to explain what had happened. I took a few days off from work, citing health reasons. During that time, I planned to look for a new place to live and arrange a moving company. In the meantime, Mr. Johnson called my mother and said he was going to return to his village, that he would leave the building to a real estate agent, and that he needed the keys so the apartments could be shown. He was right. We had the only set of keys, and in all the chaos, we had forgotten to give them back to him. My mother hurriedly went back to the apartment with my brother. She called me while she was on the way and explained the situation. A deep sense of unease settled inside me. I was angry at my mother and at myself. I told her I was coming too, even though she said they were almost there and that I did not need to come. I said I was coming anyway and took a taxi toward the building. When I arrived in front of the apartment, I called my mother, but she did not answer. I called again and again, my chest filled with fear and panic. I was on the verge of breaking down, thinking why she was not answering her phone when everything was so clearly dangerous. I went inside the building and knocked on Mr. Johnson's door. He opened it looking extremely happy and cheerful. The smile on his face looked disturbingly artificial. As I wondered why he seemed so horrifyingly joyful, I quickly said, "Mr. Johnson, my mother was supposed to give you the keys." "Come in, my dear," he said. "They are inside." Why would my mother be inside his apartment? My anger surged. I could not hide the shock on my face. I stormed inside, shouting angrily, asking why my mother was not answering her phone. The moment I entered, I was confronted with the most horrific sight of my life. In the middle of the living room, my mother and my brother were hanging upside down from the ceiling, side by side. Their hands were bound to their legs. Their faces and eyes looked just like those of the other neighbors. Everyone knows what kind of irreversible damage such a sight can do to a person's sanity. I began screaming and crying uncontrollably and turned toward Mr. Johnson. The smile on his face now covered his entire expression. He stood before me like the devil himself. "You are the only one left," he said, driven by survival instinct and a bit of luck. As he moved toward me, he slipped and fell to the floor. I seized the moment and ran straight for the door. Other residents of the building had heard my screams and my mother's screams and had already called the police. At that exact moment, officers who were already involved in the investigation arrived at the door and heard my cries. As I ran outside, Mr. Johnson came after me. Since he had no weapon, he surrendered immediately and was taken alive. I lost consciousness at that point. When I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital. My uncle was standing beside me. When I asked what had happened, he told me to calm down first and said that I would learn everything in time. We buried my mother and my brother. After that, I wanted to be present at the first hearing, to hear his testimony with my own ears. But what he told the court chilled my blood more than anything I had ever heard. By the time he appeared in court, he looked completely broken. What he described went far beyond the limits of logic and reason. He said that years earlier, when he was living in the apartment he occupied now, the place had originally been a makeshift house. One day, while working in the garden, he found a chest buried underground. At first, he thought it was filled with gold and that he would become rich. When he broke open the locked chest, he said he found a book inside. He claimed that the book was a contract of sorts. He researched it and had it translated. He believed it was written in Latin. His obsession with money and his desire to escape poverty had completely consumed him. He used the book, made agreements with the entities that came to him, and became very wealthy. He never asked what he would have to give in return. Whatever he wished for, they did it for him. Until one day, he asked them to kill an enemy of his. They went and murdered the man, and then told Mr. Johnson that it was time for him to pay. That was when they took his wife and his 2 daughters from him. Mr. Johnson was devastated, but they took them by force. Later, with the money they had given him, he had the apartment building constructed. They told him that every new tenant would become a sacrifice. Out of fear that something would happen to him as well, he accepted their terms. He tried to offer us as sacrifices in order to feed them. After these events, Mr. Johnson was escorted out of the courtroom following the sentence of life imprisonment and the court order that he received. Psychiatric treatment in prison. It did not take long. Like the other victims, he was found hanging in his cell, bearing clear signs of torture. I am still undergoing treatment. It feels as if one day they will come for me as well. Even though 11 years have passed, that feeling has never faded. I still sleep with the lights on at night. I wake up startled by the smallest sound. Some nights I dream of that apartment, those dark stairwells, and the faces staring at me with empty eyes. The doctors say this is the result of the trauma I experienced. They tell me it will pass with time, that my brain is trying to protect itself. But I know this is not just trauma, because I recognize the feeling, that sense of waiting, the pressure that tells you something is approaching. Sometimes, when I look out the window, I think I see a shadow moving in a dark corner of the street. When I turn my head, there is nothing there, but somewhere deep inside me, I know it is still watching me, just as it took Grace, the cousins, my mother, and my brother. I feel that one day it will take me too. That is why I am telling this story. If one day I disappear, do not think that I went insane, because some things, once they are summoned, never truly leave. Thank you for listening to this story until the very end. If this video affected you, don't forget to support the channel by liking it. For more dark and realistic stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next story.